Now we come to the whole problem concerning corrections. Has the Quran changed? Which is really the one I like the most, because this is probably the most damaging part of all this research. Remember what the Muslims say. They say it's eternal, sent down, complete, unchanged. We've pretty much dispelled that it is eternal. That's not really in question, because you can't really prove that or disprove it. Sent down, well, that will be destroyed once you realize that there was no manuscript from the 7th century. So the number 3 destroys number 2, and that we already disproves, because all the earliest codices, none of them come from the 7th century. None of them are complete, and many of them are changed. Now that's the question we're going to ask now, the 4th one. Have they been changed? Is the Quran that we have today, the 1924 manuscript, is it exactly, word for word, letter for letter, the same as that which was sent down, supposedly sent out to a man named Muhammad in the 7th century? Probably the best material that has come out, probably the best study that's come out, was done by Dr. Dan Brubaker. His doctoral thesis was on that question. Are there corrections in the earliest manuscripts? Dr. Dan Brubaker just got his doctorate in the spring of 2014. I came across his doctorate in May of 2014, and then I went and spent a day with Dr. Brubaker at his home. 2 weeks before my debate in September of 2014 there in Toronto. He was living in Toronto. His house is, I won't tell you where his house is, but we spent the whole day unpacking his doctorate. What he showed me, he spent 10 years doing his thesis. 10 years going around the world looking at the 10 earliest manuscripts and some other ones, but these are the 10 major manuscripts, including the 6 I mentioned earlier. Looking at the 10 major earliest manuscripts in existence today, asking one simple question: are there corrections? That's all he wanted to find. And I remember him telling me that possibly he was hoping to find maybe 12, 15, 20 he'd be satisfied with. He found 800. Over 800. Hundreds of changes, of insertions. That means words that are just inserted above the line or below the line or in between gaps. Hundreds of erasers in all the manuscripts, where they've erased part of the manuscript, erased it, and many just left a gap there. Hundreds of erasers with writings that were inserted in the erasers. So they erased it and they wrote over top of it. Many times he found that they just wrote over top it without even erasing it. And then many times they would put tapings, block tapings. Now you might say, well, maybe those tapings are there because there has been a wound in the manuscript, or it has been torn. But when you look on the backside, there's no tear. There's nothing wrong. It's perfectly okay. It's obviously they're trying to cover up a portion of text. Then there were many of these coverings, these long coverings, like tapings, but long coverings that were covered over top of lines or words. And then they would write over top of the coverings. Ooh, I'd love to pick up the coverings and see what they're trying to cover. The same with the tapings. We'd love to look underneath the tapings to see why they have taped over it. It is these that he's found that are proving to be the most damaging. Because not only are they on these major manuscripts that we've already mentioned, what was most disturbing is that these erasers, these insertions, these coverings, these writing over top of coverings, these tapings, 6 different forms of corrections that he found continue right up until the 9th century. They're not just at the beginning, in the 8th century. They continue right through the 8th century up until the 9th century, which means they were still correcting the Quran 200 years after Muhammad. And what's most interesting is every place where Dr. Brubaker found a correction, a covering or insertion or eraser or a taping, in every case they were standardizing the text, making it uniform, bringing it into uniformity with the 1924 manuscript that we have today. Ooh, I love that. Because that shows me that even the earliest manuscripts were not finalized. There was lots of variations between the earliest manuscripts. And that's why they had to erase it and insert it and put tapings and coverings over top of it to bring it in uniformity so they were all saying the same thing, which should have been done right at the very beginning. I mean, we were told, according to Al-Bukhari, volume 6, Hadith number 509 and 510, we're told at that time that this was all done under the time of Uthman. It was Uthman that had Zayd ibn Thabit, along with Zubair, Alas, and Hadith, rewrite the Qurans in one standard form, one uniform text, and then burn all the other manuscripts, according to Hadith number 510. So that should have been done in the mid-7th century. No, they were still not burning it, changing it, correcting it, standardizing it, bringing it uniform, right up through the 8th century, right up into the 9th century. Proving, and what I suggested in the debate, that if this is the case, we can't find one manuscript that's complete from the 7th century. We can't even find one manuscript that's from the time of Uthman. If they all begin to appear in possibly the undertext of the Sana in the late 7th century, into the 8th century, up into the 9th century, and if all the manuscripts were being corrected, changed, up into the 9th century, then I suggest, and I'll say it again, I said in the debate, and I'll say it here again, the Quran did not come from Muhammad. This truly is not a text from Allah as well. Pretty much what we have now proved is that it's not eternal, was not sent down, certainly was not complete at the time of Uthman, and it has been changed hundreds of times since that date.